Mariners did something. The Mariners signed. I hate that I say that like it's such a huge surprise, but and it's not even a huge thing. But the Mariners have, according to John Heyman, signed Brian Anderson to a minor league contract. That contract will pay him $2 million, prorated, of course, if he makes the major league roster. I think it's an interesting one, so I figured I'd talk about it real quick. Thank you to Simply Seattle. Simply Seattle provides the very best in Seattle sports gear. Awesome stuff for the Mariners, Seahawks, Huskies, Kraken. Just got this hat from them. I love this hat. I think it's super underrated. Haven't seen enough. We'll show off the spring training one I got in the next few videos. But get all that great stuff at Simply Seattle. Use code MOLLYWOP15 to save 15% off your order. MOLLYWHOP15. Link in the description. So Brian Anderson. So in 2019 and 2020, Brian Anderson looked like a thing. Brian Anderson looked like he was a potential, I don't want to say middle of the order bat, but like a legitimate on the rise player. He had an OPS of 811 in 2019 and 126 games in the truncated 2020 season, 810 OPS with 11 homers. 2021, things fall off a little bit. 2022, things fall off a lot. And then 2023, after being non-tendered by Miami, his one season in Milwaukee is pretty mediocre at best. He hits 226, 310, 368. That's a 678 OPS, and that is an OPS plus of 86 with 9 homers and 1 stolen base in 4 attempts. I still like this move, despite those numbers I just gave you, in part because it's a minor league contract. There's no harm in giving a look to see if Brian Anderson can refine somewhat of the form that he showed in 2019 and 2020. And even 2018, when he was a 273, 57, 400 player, certainly can use players like that. I think what's interesting about Brian Anderson is he's a right-handed bat. You see that he has, some good numbers, but not great numbers. I think the natural assumption is to assume that this guy is better against left-handers than right-handers. That is not the case. Brian Anderson, for his career, has been significantly better against right-handed pitching than he has against left-handed pitching. The reasons for that, hard to say. Maybe he's a little bit too out in front against lefties, picking up the baseball a little bit too quick. Sounds like a weird thing, but that is absolutely something that happens. You take a look at the Savant page, and this is pretty much what he's been through his career. He's a guy who draws a lot of walks. His walk percentage was in the 67th percentile. Hard hit percentage was in the, I have 2022 up because of course I do. So let's talk about 2023. Walk percentage was in the 70th percentile, which is even better. Barreled the baseball in the 66th percentile, 10.3% of the time. Everything else there is pretty mediocre. He's a 3 true outcome type of player at this point. Whiffs a lot, 33.3% of the time. Strikes out in 29.9% of his at-bats. Expected batting average well below average. Average exit velocity well below average. But he draws walks and he can hit for power. There is a use for that on your roster. There's a use for that on anybody's roster. He's also a guy who can play in the outfield and he can handle third base and first base. Now, he hasn't played very much first base. He can handle first base just fine. He's not a great third baseman. He's decent enough, and he's a decent enough corner outfielder as well. It's like we're not talking about a star in the outfield or anything along those lines, but good enough. And the reason why I like a move like this, by the way, he also has a howitzer of an arm. Arm strength has been in the 98th to 99th percentile. He has an absolute cannon of an arm, and that could make a difference. The Mariner are throwing outfield right now, not the best. Not the best. So, like a late inning type of thing, something to keep an eye on. I'm not saying that you'd necessarily bring him in as a defensive replacement, but, it's nice to have a strong throwing arm. It is definitely better than the alternative. Slow guy. He's making plays based on his reads more than his athleticism, that's for sure. But I think the reason why I like this is because there's some offensive upside and there's some depth here. And I think he might be a guy you might be able to get away with if he doesn't make the roster, putting him in Tacoma. You're going to need a strong roster in Tacoma. You need it anyway. It's nice to have depth like that. especially when you look at the injury history of some of these players. I think you have to have a guy like him. You need to have depth. This roster, just on paper anyway, we'll see how it plays out. It's talented. It is the most injury-prone Seattle Mariner roster I think I can ever remember. And that's not great. That is not great. So having guys like Anderson on the ready, and if he has a great spring training, it's easy to see him making the major league roster. You know, you'll have to make a move on the 40-man and all of that stuff. But I could see him going to Tacoma. I could see him raking in Tacoma. And when, not if, when one of these guys has to go on the injured list, Brian Anderson is a nice little replacement. If I'm being honest with you, I probably wouldn't have done a video on Brian Anderson, except for the fact that I haven't done one in a while. I think you can probably tell that my voice still hasn't quite recovered. I've been dealing with a respiratory infection that has just kicked my you-know-what. But I'm better now. I still, if you see some weird pauses in here, it's because I had to stop the video for a second, go on a little bit of a coughing spree. Actually, I don't think I had to do it in this one. That's good. Anyway, I apologize for the lack of videos. There hasn't been a whole heck of a lot to talk about anyway. This is the thing about doing a Seattle Mariner specific YouTube channel. It's also why I'm probably going to be expanding into some more stuff. In fact, starting next week, I think I'm going to go preview some major league teams. And we'll do a lot of Mariner stuff too. Well, of course, the focus on this channel will be Seattle Mariners, but maybe a little fun taking a look at some of the other teams. Yeah, seeing who the Mariner competition is, and some teams that are just not competition because they're either way better or way worse. So yeah, Brian Anderson, what do you guys think? Hit like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. I'm a good YouTuber. Talk to you soon. Brian Anderson, I like it.